And here we are. Welcome back to the Richard Sophomore, where we never sit out. Weird hosts MDNC. Today we are talking Big 12 Media Days. It is here. It's July 10th. Look, I know Mountain West. All right, Media Days are going on. Okay. Here's what's important. I'll give you the rundown. Spencer Petras was at Mountain West Media Days. What does that tell you about the Utah State quarterback room?
In
All
the
right.
program right now. It's I mean, we're rooting for you fans. You guys deserve better than that. But the reality is, Spencer Petras is your media day representative, and maybe it's because he's going to take over head coach because he's that damn old. Maybe, but okay.
That's pretty brutal. Well, anyways, let's get into this. We're talking about Big 12 Media Days. Look, what did we decide to do? Look, we can't talk about everything, right? But we decided to take a bunch of quotes and kind of summarize, maybe some ideas about, what's shaping the Big 12, maybe some storylines with some specific teams, maybe just some funny quotes. And yes, we're going to talk about Mike Gundy. All right. I promise you, every Big 12 Media Day, we're going to talk about Mike Gundy. All right. As long as that guy is alive and coaching, we'll be talking about him for Big 12 Media Days. But yeah, I mean, CD, look, we're here, dude. I mean, it's Big 12 Media Days. SEC Media Days is next week. The week after that is ACC and Big 10 Media Weeks. I mean, holy cow. Like we're
We
in July right now.
we are 45 days until week zero. 45 days. We're a week away from college football 25 being released. We're in media day seasons. All of a sudden, we're going to blink. It's fall camp rumors and notes are coming out here and there. We cannot wait. And for you guys, as fans, for the redshirt sophomore, just so you know, we are coming out with our conference previews soon here. We are working on them really, really hard. Make sure you're
Brutal.
subscribed. Make sure you are post notifications. We're going to get to your team and we're going to hopefully have some great content for you. But right now, yeah, it's a Big 12 Media Days. And since it's the first one, obviously, a lot of eyeballs, hungry college football eyeballs are on the odds of Vegas right now. And obviously, they had their 2 day thing. A lot of change going on. Brett Yormark had his thing, but we're gonna be talking about a lot of these coaches this year in the Big 12.
Yeah. And then another news, CD is making an appearance on Texags Radio at 9:35 on Friday.
Let's
No big
go.
deal. No big deal there to talk about Big Ten football. Trying to introduce the SEC folk in the or in the Big Ten country. Isn't that right?
Yep, yep. I'm gonna do my best. I'm gonna do my best.
So yeah, we're excited that. So make sure y'all check that out over there on the TexAgs YouTube page. But anyways, let's just get into it. Okay. The first one I want to talk about Brent Brennan. All right. And there's a ton of Arizona players that are on preseason Big 12, all Big 12 uh teams, right? Brent Brennan, in response to this, when it was pointed out to him that he had a bunch of players in this list, he's like, look, the only accolades that matter are the ones that come after the season. Our focus needs to be on the process and the work that we need to do this summer. Okay. Obviously, of course, this is coach speak, right? And this isn't the entire quote, but the reality is, like, I like where he's at. Like, the expectations are very high for Arizona right now. And, they lose, like, basically their entire coaching staff. They lose a couple, pretty solid players, and you're moving to a new conference. There's so much change going on in that program, but yet the expectations are still so high for this Arizona program. And Brent Brennan, I think, understands that very well. Also, I don't know if you saw, but he was wearing some insane Jordans too, uh, at SEC Media Days as well. There's like a backdrop or like a zoomed out macro picture of him, and he's like just vibing at these desks with like some sick sneakers. So Brent Brennan apparently has a sneaker game. So respect to that guy, I guess.
I mean, they they all looked good there. They were all fitted. What did they the Lewhauser? To be honest, I'm not quite sure exactly what they're called, but McMillan had. I think McMillan's mom made it all for him, which is awesome. I think that's awesome. Obviously, me today is you're a little bit less stressed out than you are, come September and October and even early August. But it's good to see some of the other sides of these coaches and players that you don't get to see on Saturdays in the fall.
Yeah, absolutely. And I I think we both saw this hire. I don't remember exactly what I'd have to look to see what grade I gave this exactly when we were talking about our new coaching hires. If you haven't checked out our new coaching hires video, oh, what are you doing after this? Make sure you check out our Brent Brennan video. But the summary was like that. It was a good hire, man, coming from San Jose State. Um, a program that historically has struggled, which is crazy given the geographical location of that program. I understand, the athletic budget has a lot to do with that and the conference, but he kind of brought that program out from the ground, and I think it's a great replacement at Arizona. And while yeah, this is coach speak, and like you would expect a lot of these coaches to say the same thing, but it feels like at least Brent Brennan is understanding that there is pressure and that he's immediately kind of expected to perform. So uh, shout out Brent Brennan, man. I'm excited to see what he does. I guess you'll find out what we think he's going to do in his first year in our conference preview for the Big 12. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, obviously, like we talked about all year, and we will continue to talk about it anytime we're in the Big 12, especially with those, teams that consider themselves in that upper tier. Anyone's got a chance to win this thing, and the year to win it's the year one, right? Especially when you've got those returning talents offensively and defensively as well for you, even with the new coaching changes. Interesting fact, though, that I did see from Big 12 Media Days, right? Arizona is going to play BYU on October 12th. Last time that they played each other, right? For our audience here, 1977. It was a conference game, right? Guess what conference they were both in? Not the Mountain West,
Not the
the
Mountain West.
beloved WAC. It
The
was yeah,
beloved whack.
the beloved WAC. And so that's kind of crazy. Interesting factoid for you. For the Pac-12 there. Obviously, I'm sorry, the Big 12. Sorry, the Big 12. Obviously, with all the conference realignment, you're gonna have all these different conference games. Some people are new conference foes or new conference opponents, and some people are renewing old rivalries, which is awesome. And that's kind of the beauty. You mentioned how cyclical college football is, and it kind of happens like that.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. Let's talk about Kenny Dillingham over here. And it's interesting because, look, the quote that I want to bring up, right, is Kenny Dillingham was basically asked, what is he looking for in Arizona State's starting quarterback, right? There's a lot of shakeup there, right? No more Jaden Rashada. I mean, last year you were already kind of struggling. No Trenton Bourget anymore. I mean, there's new guys in the room. And he says, look, I want a guy who can protect the football, the ability to scramble and extend plays. And I think we have that this year. It's kind of nuts because, look, you're looking at a couple quarterbacks on this roster, and Jeff Sims doesn't take care of the
No,
football.
he does not at all. He can scramble, he can extend plays, right? He does not protect the football, or at least he
Yeah.
did not last year.
Yeah.
It was
Actually, sorry,
crazy.
correction. Trent Bourget is on this roster. I believe. I thought he transferred out of there, but I believe he's still on this roster. But
Yeah,
that leads me to believe that it's Sam Leavitt. Levitt? Leave it?
yeah. And those
Man,
were the tea leaves out of spring, right? And that was part of the reason like Jaden Rashada all of a sudden he transferred away
just
and you're looking at
crazy.
what's going on. And maybe part of that was he was losing the job because maybe he was a little bit too careless in practice or even in games last year. And obviously Kenny Dillingham, I trust his evaluations offensively. Right. We saw what he did at Oregon and other places. Sam Leavitt as a guy, you know, did he do fantastic things at Michigan State? No, but
Well, he's a true freshman
had to did
last year.
anyone. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't really his fault. I don't blame him for that at all.
And you
And
had guys ahead of him that like you thought maybe had a shot to do something, right? Caden Hauser
yeah,
included, who was the higher rated recruit that Mel Tucker and staff were really high on. For of course coaching staff changes were made. Aiden Childs is over there. I mean, I get why you want to get out of there, and he's a chance to start here. And what it sounds like, and I trust Kenny Dillingham's ability to evaluate a quarterback. I really do. I really do. If he's confident in Sam, I mean, are we riding Sam? I mean, they're over on a win total for this year, I believe, is at 4.5.
yeah. Last year was at
So
5.5, but last year you
five
also had
last
crazy,
injuries.
crazy injuries. You had zero depth even going into the year, and the injury bug was terrible. So we'll see. But obviously, it helps to have a guy like Trenton Bourget who is at least a veteran dude, and he can help and if leave it struggling or at least help him prepare, be that full-time starter. And Jeff Sims, obviously, I don't we're obviously bringing up Jeff Sims. I don't hate the take at all by Kenny Dillingham. I think it's a fantastic thing. And then obviously, you're push and leave it and whatever else, and it gives you just a different athlete in that room that you don't have. And you might as well, throw a rope out there for it. But um, that's an interesting take there because they're not going to give you much, right? Dillingham and other coaches, they're not going to give you much. But it's an interesting take that quote that you found there.
Well, it interesting to me too. He didn't say anything about throwing the ball. He just said he wants a guy who can protect the football, the ability to scramble and extend plays. And then he says, I think we have that this year. So I don't know if that's forecasting like what that quarterback room looks like. Maybe that's why Jeff Sims is in there as well. Maybe you just have a bunch of frisky quarterbacks that now Jeff Sims doesn't take care of the football. That's it's a little
Doesn't, but
unless he takes care of the football in practice, unless he's the best practice player of all time. And we've seen that before. It happens.
yeah,
So I mean, gosh, I don't know. But I mean, regardless, I'm excited for Kenny Dillingham. I'm a Kenny Dillingham believer. I believe you are as well. I mean,
yeah. I mean,
just give him some time.
is it going to equate to wins this year? Who knows, right? And you guys are, who knows, right? And I don't know if Kenny Dillingham even knows. But the reality is he needs time, he needs patience there from his administration and support there, continuing to back him up, continuing to give him resources to eventually build up that program. It was in a terrible spot when he took over, and he knows what to do, right? It's just how long are they going to give him? How long does he have to implement it?
You were a you were a bottom 10 team in the country in scoring margin, right? And points per game scored and red zone attempts allowed, passing yards allowed per game, passing attempts allowed per game. I mean, dead last. Not dead last, but like you were bottom 10 in all of these categories. Even like monumental improvement could mean that they only win 4 games. Like they still might not hit the order, even if they see definite strides in their game. They won 3 games last year, right? So we'll have to see with Kenny Dillingham. We'll have to see. But let's move on though. Unless you have something else you want to say about Kenny Dillingham.
No, all good.
Let's talk about Dave Aranda then. Um, this was, I think, highlighted on Twitter a lot. So I'm sure y'all saw it. And this quote actually explains a lot why I like Dave Aranda. I don't know if he's going to be the Baylor head coach at the end of next year, but I do like Dave Aranda a lot. Dave Aranda on what was on what prompted Baylor's recent run of recruiting success. He said, "We're paying players." So I don't know. Here's the thing. I don't know if that was a shot at his previous NIL funding at his school, if that was a compliment to them that, hey, we're getting this done now. Because before, if you remember, Dave Aranda was pretty adamant about not using the transfer portal. But then he rescinded that statement saying, oh, no, we should have been using that, right? Well, Christopher, is this another situation where he's like a little bit late to the party, like he should have been using NIL sooner? Or do you think this is more a compliment, like, hey, thank you guys for finally getting this going?
I think it's a little bit more. I think it's both. Obviously, I think he was late to the party. He admitted that, and obviously his team suffered. I'm not because of it, but definitely it could have changed some things. Who knows there? But we saw a couple years ago they had really good success. They won the Big 12, right, on that famous last play against Oklahoma State, right? They won, and then they went to Sugar Bowl. I don't know. He's definitely on the hot seat right now. But their last recruiting class, right in 24, 53rd. They were 67th composite rank. 67th for Baylor is unacceptable. You didn't sign a single 4-star. And I get that stars aren't everything, but there is a legit correlation to success and recruiting, obviously, especially at the high school ranks. And obviously, I know it's tough to recruit because, all the rumors about David Aranda being fired and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is that's not good enough. And this year, got off to a little bit better start, up to the 44th, right? They got 15 commits, a real good guy from Texas, Cameron Morgan, D lineman there. And as well in the portal in this offseason, they got some nice pieces. And it's interesting.
Yep.
I mean, it's the
Ashton
reality.
Hawkins,
Oh, yeah. DeQuan Finn.
DeQuan
It,
Finn.
it's the reality of college football today, right? And he's just admitted it. And I don't think it was no surprise to anybody, but it's kind of funny to see a head football coach saying at media day, we're paying players. Imagine telling you that 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I think if you look at the entire quote, right, this was taken out of context, I guess, somewhat. He did mention some other things, I believe. However, like this is obviously the highlight, right, of like the quote. This was the point. I'm sure there's other things that they've changed up. Dave Aranda himself, is just a good coach. Like, why wouldn't you want to play for a good coach? However, some coaches are better recruiters than others, but Dave Miranda's no stranger to recruiting at a high level, on other Power Five teams. Yeah, I think he might have been a little bit late to the party. Obviously it's not the head coach that runs fully NIL, but like I don't know. If you think that coaches have zero involvement in that, I think you're a little bit naive. But there's conversations going in the background that I it sounds like Dave Aranda may have gotten the ball rolling on this. And again, I don't know this. I'm not tied in the Baylor program, so I'm sure you Baylor fans who are tied in with those beat writers and all that know more than we do. But it sounds like they finally got the ball rolling. Maybe Dave Aranda kind of sparked that a little bit, but maybe it's just too late. But maybe this is the foundation. Maybe another coach comes into Baylor and all of a sudden you kind of have a situation where you're adept to using the transfer portal. You have your NIL funds in order and you have a great geography over there in Waco, Texas. Like could be an interest. It'll be a very interesting job. I think it's a better job than people will like tell you when or if that job opens up. But these are all just things to think about, right? Actually, let's move on. Let's talk about Kalani Sitake. Did you want to take over this part?
Yeah, no, yeah, Clarence Taki. I mean, it's interesting that I mean, one of the things he brought up that really sparked my eyes was how nice it was that the Holy War rivalry with them in Utah is back to a conference game. We've brought this up a couple times now with Arizona BYU. Now it's BYU and Utah. That's really, really awesome. One of the greatest rivalries in college football, right? Hands down. One of the greatest, obviously. And Sadak is a guy that's had success in it for sure, but it's nice to see that it's
It
back
means
to a
more.
conference game. It's just,
It
I
does
mean,
mean more. When
even
you're
that
playing the
much
same
more,
conference, when you're playing the same conference, it does mean more. It really does.
even that much more, absolutely. And it was interesting because he's had success, right? But obviously, as an independent, a little bit different scheduling dynamics and whatnot. But they move to the Big 12 and they struggle in year one, right? They lose some games maybe they shouldn't have lost and whatnot. And there were some rumblings about Sataki and is he going to stay there, blah, blah. And he shut that down right away. He said, I'm in here for the long run. I'm not looking for the quick fix. And I think that's, I mean, obviously it's what you want him to say. And that's kind of the reality. And I think that is the reality of the program right now. It's going to take some
Yeah.
time, but BYU is absolutely a program that can be competing for the Big 12, um, at least every couple of years for sure.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at, not all schedules are created equal, right? In the past, when BYU was an independent, like really like they didn't have a Notre Dame schedule. They played some interesting teams. Like I don't think they ever played like any FCS teams, but they played some lower level teams. And they had that run with Zach Wilson, right? They've had success, not just Zach Wilson, obviously like other quarterbacks as well. Taysom Hill had his years, whatever. But yeah, now every year you're gonna be playing like, maybe your Big 12 schedule is not as uh, tough per se from a power rating standpoint versus the SEC or the Big Ten. But if you look at the Big 12 conference, like it still might be it's just as deep as those other conferences in terms of like the actual depth and like the quality of game that you're going to be playing week to week, like and the quality of opponent. Like you're still going to be playing against really good teams. Like BYU's, they're up in they're swimming in the deep end now. This is year two. We'll see. And I think Sataki has the right approach. Like, yeah, like you can't look at it like it's just going to happen in one year, but the reality is like the pressure's even more on now that Utah's in your conference, right? And the pressure's on, that Arizona and Arizona State are in your conference. Like there's just more teams. There's more losses to go around potentially. And, you know, for a team like BYU historically, like has just relied on really developing their players. Iowa State kind of has the same approach, and Matt Campbell's had success there, but we'll see if this we'll see if Kalani Sitake's got it, if that approach is going to work here in the Big 12. And I think it could. I think it absolutely could.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well, let's move on. Let's talk about Gus Malzahn. Obviously, Gus Malzahn's head coach at UCF. Okay, and it was brought up. Like I think he was asked something about what it's like developing young quarterbacks, right? And you have to remember that this is a guy that on his roster in the last few years has had Mikey Keene transferred, Dylan Gabriel transferred, Tommy Castellanos transferred, Timmy McClain transferred. All, you know, relatively potentially starting quarterbacks in other spots. I know Timmy McClain maybe won't start at Arkansas State, but like higher level quarterbacks that are transferring to other schools. And Gus Malzahn, of course, after John Reese Plumlee goes to KJ Jefferson in the portal and he goes to Ja'Cory Brown in the portal, he says, quote, I think it's harder to have a quality backup in this day in the age of college football than ever before. And, I agree with this, definitely to some degree. And I think people will look at this and be like, oh, he totally ruined the situation with Mikey Keene, Dylan Gabriel, and Tommy Castellanos and Timmy McClain. Like, I I don't know. Yeah, maybe he did do something right. Like I don't think this is a Kevin Sumlin at Texas A&M when he messed up the Kenny Hill, Kyle Allen, Kyler Murray thing. Okay, like it's not like that. All right, I think he's right to some degree. Like especially the quarterback position because of its value. I think they're more adept to moving, especially grad transfers. Like you're seeing more grad transfers at the quarterback position just being plugged and played. So KJ Jefferson being one of them. I think it's just I don't know. It is hard to keep and develop a quarterback these days. I'm not against Gus Malzahn on this statement. I don't know. Maybe you feel differently.
No, I think it's absolutely right. I mean, it's the reality. I don't know if it's more of a shot on how he feels about his current roster as it's currently constructed. Getting Ja'Cory Brown, I think partially is the reality of like everyone's dealing with this, right? And if you're going to be upset at him, let's say KJ Jefferson, he knows that he's had injury history, or at least this past year or two staying healthy, and you're going to be running the football with him a good amount. Obviously, that's the way his offense works, especially not only this year, but long term at UCF, you're going to have backup quarterbacks see significant times. That role is going to be very, very important. And you mentioned all those guys that are gone now. To me, it reminds me of Penn State, right? Back in 2021 when they had Sean Clifford, right? Sean Clifford's, no world beater by any means, right? But he got hurt in 2021 and they struggled in the middle of that season. And you had to go to Velo and whatnot. Like it was tough. And everyone's like, well, where's your backup quarterback? And the backup quarterback was Will Levis, who was in the transfer portal, who was at Kentucky, and then was a second round pick. And then like it's the reality. Like it's hard, like you said, it's harder than ever to develop young quarterbacks because it's also they want to play, right? They want to play, and it's not about developing; it's about playing. And it's just the reality of it. But I'm glad he made a point, though. I mean, I think it's faced
Yeah.
well, and I do think there's going to be a mindset change in fans that has to take place and expectations where it's like if your starting quarterback goes down and you've seen a flurry of transfers out of your backup quarterback spot, right? It's just the reality of it. It's just the reality of I mean, look at Utah. I mean, I didn't have a ton of transfers away, obviously, but their backup quarterbacks, it really struggled. Now, a lot of things were wrong injury wise there, but
Those
it's
quarterbacks are gone at other places
yeah.
competing for spots.
Well, okay, Bryson Barnes is at Utah State, who we talked about, and
Nate
Nate Johnson's
Johnson's
at
at
Vandy.
Vanderbilt. Yeah.
Yeah, which is cool.
Yeah, which is cool. And now they got well, yeah, the true freshman Isaac Wilson they got there. They still got Brandon Rose because Brandon Rose got hurt. That's why. Forgot about that. But
Now,
anyways,
I do want to mention one quick note on UCF. They had one of their media day representatives, right, was their linebacker DB, Deshaun Pace, and he's a transfer. If you're a Big 10, Big 12 fan, you know that name from Cincinnati. He was at Big 12 media days a year ago for Cincinnati. And now a year later, he's at Big 12 media days for UCF. How wild is that? It's just a sign of the times. I think it is. It's a little bit crazy. I wanted to throw that fact in there. Just a little nugget for you guys. That's like, whoa. I mean, that's just the reality of college football right now. Like it's ever changing, and it's not about not getting attached to players, but it's like being an informed college football fan in the offseason takes a lot of time.
Yeah. Important thing too for Cincinnati and UCF fans, and Gus Malzahn during media days recognized that Cincinnati was a rivalry, right? Cincinnati fans, okay? It's okay that they're your rival. UCF fans, it's okay if they're your rival. Like, have rivalries. Like, I don't know, like this shouldn't be forced, right? Like y'all are coming from the same conference. Y'all's fan bases do not like each other. I see the interactions on Twitter, right? Just have a rivalry, man. Like just have one. There's no other team in Ohio in the Big 12. There's no other team in Florida in the Big 12, right? Have your rivalries, have fun with it, man. Like I know the UCF fans, some of y'all, and not all of y'all, I'm not gonna call every single one of y'all out. Some of y'all are saying, oh, they're not really a rivalry. And Cincinnati fans like, yes, they are a rivalry. Like everyone just embrace being a rival. All right. More rivalries there are in college football, the healthier the sport is. That's all I have to
Couldn't
say.
agree more. Couldn't agree more.
Let's move on. Let's talk about Cincinnati then. Let's talk about Scott Satterfield. Scott Satterfield, he was asked about, oh, who's going to be the starting quarterback in the fall? And when me and you were covering transfer portal stuff, we immediately thought, oh, Brendan Sorsby, right? If you
Yeah.
remember, transfer from Indiana, he went to Cincinnati. I'm like, oh, Brendan Sorsby. He was fantastic in Indiana. Well, Scott Satterfield, I mean, this is kind of classic Scott Satterfield, though. Like, he completely dodged the question. He said, quote, people mentioned Brendan Sorsby. You got Samaj Jones that we signed as a true freshman that just got to Cincinnati in January. And you got Lichty. Lichty started 1 or 2 games for us last year and played a lot. All three of those guys are competing. So is this a situation? And I have my thoughts on this as well. You know, this isn't like a trap question. This is like, do you, is this like you feel like this is all smoke and Brendan Sorsby is really the starter, or do you feel like there really is such a competition that either someone's going to rise to the top or that they're all just kind of in this cesspool of mediocrity that like no one has really risen to the top yet? How do you feel about that?
You know, transfer quarterbacks and transfers in general, they're just hard to predict, right? I feel pretty good about the floor, or at least, the potential floor and ceiling of what I think Brendan Sorsby brings to the table. So at least I know that there is a floor for that quarterback room. Part of me thinks this is just, hey, we've got three young quarterbacks, right, who are all looking around and they're like, well, someone's going to win this job and play for multiple years. And just like we talked about with Gus Malzahn and having backup quarterbacks,
Yes.
this is
Yes.
uber important. And it's not about misleading the kids. It's about creating competitions and breeding, the best players. And if Samaj Jones comes out and wins the job, awesome. If Sorsby wins it, like we all kind of more so expect to, great. If Lichty, right, he comes in and you have balls out there and fall, even better, right? I think it's just not a bad thing to have competition for your roster. And I do think that he feels pretty good about that room. I mean, you don't move a guy like Brady Drogosh, who was, a big time recruiting win that they got just a year ago, to linebacker. I mean, I get it, he's a good athlete, he's a big kid, and maybe it's long term his better position, but they just kind of wanted to get him on the field. And I don't think that some portal losses, right, contribute to that, but also like he I think the reality of the quarterback room is that they're all young, pretty talented players that I don't know if Dragic his best use is at quarterback. And it's not a Dragic video, but the reality is I do feel pretty good for a quarterback room as opposed to a year ago with Emory Jones for Cincinnati, which is good.
Yeah, I like it too. I like to. I'm with you. I do like the transparency though. Like again, like I was talking about David Randa earlier. One thing that I really liked was he talked to Gary Bohannon. He was like, "Hey, Blake Shapen is the starting quarterback right now," and it gave Gary Bohannon the ability to go into the transfer portal and then ultimately lose the job that he won at FAU, or sorry, South Florida to
USF,
Byron.
but
Or
Byron
sorry,
Brown's a
yeah,
stud.
yeah, Byron Brown is a stud, but yeah, but I think there's two
And
ways to go
Bohannon is
about it.
sorry, Bohannon is back in the Big 12 at BYU,
Yeah,
which is awesome.
That's nuts. Yeah, we already talked about Kalani Sitake. But anyways, the point is, I don't know if there's a right way to do it. I think it's just all smoke. I think Brendan Sorsby is going to be the starting quarterback, but how coaches want to go about that, I think, is their prerogative. But I don't think that there's a significant difference about the way you go about it. And people might disagree with that. I don't have a problem with that. People can have their opinions. Sure.
I mean, these are they're not just student athletes anymore. They are, paid players, and then you're gonna get treated like professionals more than you used to, and that's gonna happen with this. Like, maybe 5 years ago, everyone would be more so, let's pro player, let's give him a chance to play. If he doesn't want to, if he can't play here, let him have transfer, let him have a chance to play. I think that's more so true if it was, a redshirt senior who maybe is his last chance to play. I'm thinking about a guy like Jason Bean, right? Where, it's like, we got a guy like Jaden Daniels who's a stud. And Bean, maybe he's going to transfer, maybe he's going to retire from football, all these things, but they convince him to come back for this or that reason, whatever. And to me, that just feels like the right thing to do. But it's also like I said, these are professional athletes that you're going to be treated like that. So you're going to have players that are just going to have to be stuck for years, if they, I guess, not misled, but just, competition.
Agreed. Let's move on. Let's talk about Deion Sanders. Yes, and there were people on Twitter talking about this quote, and I'm going to read the full quote, right? So everyone has the full context and not just like the snippet first sentence of what he said, right? So Deion Sanders basically was asked if he feels an obligation with, whom he is to perform at a higher level or coach at a higher level. Like what? Like, so you're asking a Power Five coach, like whether or not he feels an obligation to perform at a higher level? And he's like, yes, yes. He says, I'm judged on a different scale. My wins are totally different than your wins. And I think that quote was taken out of context. People like to make good jokes with that, but the full quote, your wins, you just judge football. That's why I start out, give you education and academics and so forth. I have to give you those things so you understand there's a greater scope. I can't win 9 games and our GPA suffers. Our GPA can't be high and we lose another 8 games. We can't not go and grab high school players and you got to grab a bunch of guys in the portal, out of the portal, uh, players out of the portal getting incarcerated. My wins are different. We have to win in every area. That's the way we're judged. And I like that. I mean, that's a solid answer. He's saying we got to win academically, we got to win on the field, we got to win off the field, right? And some people that are coming in need help in those areas, and it's his job to perform in all of those areas. So, like, I guess one way you could look at it, if you want to look at it negatively, could be like, oh, it's about winning. It's about winning. What, you know, I don't know. It sounds like good coach answer. Like, not that I would necessarily have my kids play for Deion Sanders, but like that's a good thing to say. Like that you care about the kids' well-being. Now, did you care about the kids' well-being when you brought in a ton of transfers and told the other kids that were already there to leave, and then those transfers that came in, you brought in new transfers, and now those kids can't transfer. Of course, rules have changed, but um, I don't know. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of gray area with that, and you can have your opinions. But I think what he said wasn't a bad thing. It wasn't a bad thing that he said. I really don't. I thought it was a solid answer and an answer, quite frankly, similar to what I would have probably given. But yeah, I don't know. People are going to disagree with that, but I don't know what your thoughts are.
No, I mean, he's right. He is judged on a different scale. I do think part of the attention and judging and expectations are, yes, he's brought that upon himself because he's Deion Sanders, Hall of Famer, stud college football player. Obviously, the attention they've gotten from Jackson State, but it's also like the attention that he brings on himself, and I think part of it is not his own fault, but like he's kind of doing it to himself in certain ways. But I do think if you sift through some of that stuff, like you're gonna find it's pretty valid coach speak and culture mentalities and all these things that he's talking about and preaching. I mean, is he going to go and you know kick people out of their team and make sure that they have spots for other transfers? Yes, but so is every other coach doing that right now. It's just he's going to be the one a little bit to a macro scale, and it's gonna come out with him, right? And you're going to see about it, we're going to talk about it, we're going to judge about it and whatnot. But yeah, I think it's a valid answer, and it's also he knows, like, he's got some self awareness for everything that you say about him. Like you can't say he doesn't understand himself and what kind of, you know, he met, I don't know, icon he brings to the table for Colorado and just the image that follows around him.
Yeah. Well, because we just got to keep this moving, right? I'm going to go over to Willie Fritz, and it's his first year at Houston, moving over from Tulane. Before that, he was at Georgia Southern. I'm pretty sure. Gosh, someone's going to probably correct me, tell me he's at Georgia State. But either way, okay. His quote, out of context, said, "The best high school football in the nation is here in the state of Texas, and I think the epicenter of football is in Houston, Texas." And the reason why I pulled up this quote by him was because I think he's right in the sense where, like, there is a ton of potential. Like, there is an immense amount of talent, particularly in that Houston area, not just Texas as a whole, but like in that Houston area, that if you just keep a couple guys, and we mentioned this, in our Willie Fritz video, make sure you guys check that out. Like there are guys like Ed Oliver, like guys that are just homegrown. You just keep in there and you're able to just let them nurture and they can still develop, right? Willie Fritz has done a fantastic job of developing those guys at Tulane and getting them ready for the next level. I I think he's 100% right. And I don't know if it's like the best high school football in the nation is in the state of Texas. It could be. I mean, I'm here in Texas now. It is very good. But whether I think it might even depend year to year, right? Like some years it might be better in Georgia. Like some players are better than others in certain years. It's all different, okay? But the point is that in Houston you had the tools to be great, and now Houston is a Power Five conference. I think he also mentioned that there was an emphasis from the athletic director that they were going to get money into the program. I think if they really start investing in this thing, man, like Houston could be a really good football program 10, 15 years from now. Now, is Willie Fritz still going to be the coach there because of his age in 10 to 15 years? Probably not. That'd be really impressive if he was. But I think a hire like Willie Fritz, I think, is the step in the right direction. I think he's completely right in saying this.
At least, yeah, I mean, at least he understands the state in which he's going. I don't think he would have taken that job. But let me rephrase that. I think he took that job because it is a better job than maybe it is viewed on in a macro stage of college football because of the potential that is there, because of being in the Big 12, or at least moving the Big 12, like right with Houston. Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't nitpick that in, Metro Georgia and South Florida and California, Ohio if you want. You can humor yourself with that. But the reality is there is a lot. Whether it's the best or second best or best, there is a ton of talent there that he can sift through. And not only that in the high school ranks, but we've talked about it before with schools in Florida, right, in Georgia, where you can come back home in the transfer portal and maybe transfer down a level or down from maybe you were at Ohio State, for example, and then you're like, you're not playing there, you're a little homesick, gonna come back home to Houston, right, where you're from, and come back. So I think it works not only in high school but also in transfer portal, and I hope that he could take advantage of that because if he can, you're gonna look at a team that could potentially be pretty talented compared to some other teams in the Big 12.
You know who that is? Noah Rogers. Perfect example.
Yeah,
Ohio State from Raleigh. It's like, oh, I'm not playing that much. Let me go back to NC State, right? And that's a program that's, in a good spot right now. And the athletic
Jackson
departments
Howard.
in that look, that NC State is investing in their baseball, basketball, football programs effectively. Houston has already done that work for their basketball program. I think a lot of the programs, there is a positive correlation, whether you like to believe it or not. Like if there is hype around certain teams in your college, it is likely that it'll bleed into your other programs. Just
Nate Oates.
trust me,
Nate Oates in
it
Alabama.
does. It's
Kentucky's a
Oklahoma's like
football school
that.
all of a sudden now. So
Tennessee's like that. Florida. I mean, like the lists go on and on, right? Like good athletic programs are good athletic programs, right? And I think Houston is in stepping in the right direction. Let's move on. Let's talk about Matt Campbell. He simply says, "This is not breaking news, by the way." He says, "We're not the transactional school. I'm not the transactional coach. We've really believed in building and developing." Yeah, no doy. I mean, and I say that I guess in the sense where it sounds like, and maybe I got a little bit, I got criticized for this a little bit. There is a value in being not a transactional school in the sense where you are building and developing a program, but Matt Campbell does not go in the transfer portal, and because of this power grab in the Big 12, I do have my worries about the future of the Iowa State program. I'm not talking about this year. I think this year Iowa State's going to be a very good football team. I think even the year after, maybe the year after, they could be a good football team. I do worry about the future of that program. Um, I mean, this also is, I guess, coach speak as well. You could look at it and be like, oh yeah, of course, any coach would say that. I mean, guys like Lincoln Riley would say that. Yeah, we're not transactional. We really believe in developing. Like, yeah,
It's
anyone's going to say that.
our guys,
It's
the
our
guys we have.
guys. Our guys. Mario Williams is our guy.
No, he's
So is Malachi Nelson's our guy. That's our
no,
guy.
no, but I will say, I I do think, like you said, like there is a certain niche that you can kind of have for Iowa State, and there's a role for you in this state of college football. The problem is the margin of error is super, super small. So if you miss on one recruiting class, you miss on one position here and there. I mean, look at, I mean, your linebacking core, you miss a couple classes in a row, and you're gonna really struggle to fill that hole. And teams are gonna exploit that in your conference. And Matt Campbell knows that. And he's had years where they've struggled, and they've had years where they had really high success. You could build up to those years if you're okay with that. And I think a program like Iowa State is. And I think they're very fortunate to have a guy like Matt Campbell because I don't think they can all of a sudden switch to a transactional school. I mean, let's be honest though, if Matt Campbell had the resources at Iowa State to become a quote unquote transactional school, I'm sure they would be doing a little bit more transactioning than they are right now. Right. Like that's just the reality. Every coach wants to be able to, more so for retention, right? Maybe not for acquiring, but for retention wise, where it's like, and they did a good job this year, but in future years or whatnot, or maybe even keeping guys home or even, transferring back home. I don't know. I think it's a nice quote, coach speak, and it makes a lot of sense, but I guess what's new? What's new?
Let's move on. Let's talk about Lance Leipold. And I'm going to bring up this quote. It's just a reminder that Kansas is having renovations to their stadium. And Lance Leipold said, basically, because they were talking about they're going to play 2 games or 4 games at Arrowhead and 2 games at Children's Mercy Park in Kansas City. He says, yeah, we're practicing on grass more than we ever have. And he continues by saying, part of me feels bad that, they, meaning 30 of the seniors, right, don't get to play in Lawrence this year, which is a bummer. But how about I mean, it's just a reminder, once again, you're looking at the win total of Kansas, 8.5 wins, which is interesting, of course, which is interesting. But there's a lot of seniors on that team. Again, like you said, 30 of them. A lot of impact players that are seniors. Um, but also, how about investing in the football program? How about
Yeah.
that?
Listen, it's not it's not a bad thing, right? I mean, yes, it sucks in the short term, but this is long overdue, and they're kind of capitalizing on a nice window that they have here with Leipold, and they got him to sign an extension,
You
and now
called
they're
it
putting in
you called it a window.
window.
No, you called it a window. Like, are you implying that Lance Leipold is going to get out of there at
No,
the?
my point is let's be honest, right? And I'm not saying this. I love Texas. I'm sorry, I love Kansas, and I
No,
love Lance
I'm not.
Leipold.
I'm not trying to
I'm
trap you. I want you just to expand on that.
I Yeah, thank you. I will say, like, you have had success and you haven't had success in a while, right? That success is not guaranteed. And Lance Leipold will be the first one to tell you that. You have to capitalize on it now, right? So then you can continue this window as long as you can.
Yeah,
Better?
that's it. That makes sense. But yeah, I wanted to like just remind everyone that I'm sure people forgot about all that kind of stuff. But let's move on to Chris Kleiman, staying in the state of Kansas. He basically just amped up. The quote that I got was the depth on the defensive line is a huge plus. We are about 8 to 9 deep, including 2 6-year defensive ends. I don't know if I can agree with the 8 to 9 deep. Kansas State fans, I'm sure would disagree with me. However, it sounds like that's a position group that he's pretty excited about. If he's bringing it up, if he's saying that he's 8 to 9 deep at the defensive line position, in that conference, where again we mentioned where running the ball is all of a sudden cool, which it hasn't been. Um, I mean that could bode pretty well for Kansas State, a team that loses what I think is some pretty good talent on that team on the offensive line. At quarterback, I know people are higher on Avery Johnson than Will Howard somehow. I'll wait to see, but yeah, I mean, sounds like sounds like he's confident at that spot.
Yeah, no, I mean, I like the D line, and again, it's part of like the what do you believe, what you don't believe? Is the coach speak? Is it or just blah blah hyping up our program and our team? Kleiman seems like a pretty down to earth guy. I don't think he'd be talking this highly on a team that he doesn't really feel confident, especially in a year where there's high expectation for them to succeed. But yeah, I want to turn the attention over to the offense side of the ball. Right, you talked about they got a new offensive coordinator coming in, right? Connor Riley. Obviously, Colin Klein, as you all know, is down at Texas A&M. Connor Riley, that guy is very familiar with Chris Kleiman, been there since North Dakota State. He's been a really good offensive line coach for a while now, produced some really damn good players out of Kansas State and North Dakota State. You bring him in to call plays, familiar with Avery Johnson. He called plays in that bowl game. That did some nice things for you. Matt Wells, right? You mentioned Matt Wells coming in,
Wow.
more staff there, and it also gives Connor Riley maybe first time Power Five offensive coordinator. You give some more experience of head coaching, work with a guy like Jordan Love to mentor and tutor a guy like Avery Johnson. It was just interesting. I mean, I saw a lot of what Kleiman said, and he sounded really, really pumped. Talking about the versatility and the explosiveness that they have in this team, especially with the weapons that they have. It should be fun. It should be pretty fun. They got to replace a lot of guys on the offensive line, and but yeah, real quick, I want to mention something. While we're on the topic of Big 12 Media Days, this is why we love college football, right? And even like some of the benefits of NIL. You got a guy like Hadley Panzer, right? Kansas State fans know him, stud offensive lineman for you. He's from a small town in Kansas called Lankin, right? This is the first time he said he was ever wearing a suit was
That's
at Big 12 Media Days,
crazy.
which is awesome. And Wildcats NIL helped them all get dressed up. He was wearing a nice lavender tie, looking good, representing his school in a city like Vegas. Like I don't know if he'd ever thought he'd be able to see and experience. I mean, it's pretty awesome, and I just love that things like that to make you keep coming back to the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. I want to save Mike Gundy for last. Let's move over to Sonny Dykes. And um he just brought up KWKT Fox 44's Parker Rem. Sorry, that was a bunch of word salad, but uh basically Parker Rem asked Sonny Dykes if having his former head coach, right, aka TC's former head coach Gary Patterson on the other side, right, in Baylor gear this November adds more fuel to the rivalry. He says, quote, I'm sure he'll help their program a lot. I think that rivalry is already pretty strong. I agree. I don't think a coach is necessarily going to make that rivalry. Well, I say that as a Texas A&M fan. There's
Yeah.
there's certain coaches that can, definitely wedge their way and catalyze a rivalry for sure. But I don't think this is one of those scenarios. But it is interesting. I did think about it, and I heard him say that, and I'm like, uh, wow, I forgot that Gary Patterson was over in on Baylor.
Well, and I'm sure Gary Patterson, didn't love doing all he did for TCU and getting
Yeah.
canned. And by the way, like I love Gary
Just
Patterson
just for
and
the
he did a great
next
job.
year.
It was probably time. And then next year, Sonny Dice wins with all his players. Not all his players, but I mean, I'm sure
Yeah,
he was a
some
little
of
bit
them.
upset about that. And you had to be. The competitor in him has to be. And he just so happens to end his way, make his way over to Waco, not too far from Fort Worth. And yeah, it just adds more fuel to that rivalry, like you said. Um,
Yeah.
it's
I
awesome.
mean, as a fan, I don't think fans are thinking about that, but maybe like internally in the programs. I don't know.
Yeah. Well,
I don't
and
know.
storylines are what make college football so great, and there's a
That's
ton of
true.
them in the Big 12. And this
That's
is
true.
just another one.
That's very true. But yeah, that was just a brief one that I want to talk about. But uh Joey McGuire I wanted to bring up because there's a renewed rivalry over there. Arizona and Texas Tech, the border conference rivalry. He said it's easy for our fans to get to. When they come to us, it's easy for their fans to get to. So it's got a chance to really be a rivalry. I agree with that. I love rivalries. I love renewed rivalries. I think the backyard brawl should have been played the last 10 years. I think the Lone Star Showdown should have been played the last 10 years. I mean, I think there are so many games that, you know, kind of get lost in the sauce. And I think if in all of this conference realignment, you get to renew a rivalry like Utah and BYU, and you get a rivalry like Arizona and Texas Tech that are, actually pretty dang close to each other. I think this could be pretty awesome. And the rivalry in basketball is also going to be pretty strong too, because you got two pretty strong programs there, and baseball as well. I mean, like, look, these schools are very comparable, I think. Gosh, both these fans are going to get really pissed at me for saying that, but I think this could be a really good rivalry in not just football, but in all sports.
Yeah, I can't believe that the border conference rivalry back in 1931, 1932, they started playing each other in that conference there. It's awesome. The Southwest United States, I mean, as someone who's been watching Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, it's awesome. It is awesome. And I'm really excited for both these teams. Like you said, rivalries are fantastic for college football. And, maybe we're worried about some of them, losing its, steam. Maybe Michigan, Ohio State, if they can play each other, back to back weeks, whatever it may be. I still think that like this is awesome. This adds to the rivalry. This adds to college football. This adds to the Big 12 storylines, blah blah blah. Everything we've talked about, it's cool. And
Yeah,
also I will say like it is fun when you're playing teams where you can drive there, you can have fan interaction, fans that go to each other's games. I do think that increases the stadium atmosphere. It increases the rivalry and maybe in the camaraderie between the two programs.
yeah, and they're not right next to each other, right? I didn't want to make it seem like these two geographically are right next to each other, but I mean, Lubbock is as close to
In
Tucson as Lubbock is to like College Station or Waco.
For
So,
Lubbock Standards is not in the middle of nowhere, but
but
it's kind
it's
of in the
far
middle of
away from
nowhere.
like everything else,
Yeah.
Turn like it's far away from the other Big 12 schools. So, yeah, really cool stuff to come out of there. I liked that was a good question by um whoever had asked that question. I want to talk about Kyle Whittingham as well. This is a big one. I mean, of course, the news about Morgan Scally coming out about him being the successor, and I don't think this isn't a coincidental timing. This is like I think it's pretty purposeful. Kyle Whittingham said, "I probably won't be sitting in this chair in 2027 when Utah takes on Miami." And if you don't know, right, you can check out our short that we made. Morgan Scally basically was a defensive coordinator for Utah, and he was actually announced to be the successor for Kyle Whittingham back in 2019. However, there's kind of a controversial chain of texts where he used a not so appropriate word, one that I will not repeat on air because then I will never be allowed to talk on air ever again. It's not my word to use. And basically, he got kind of reprimanded and said, "Yeah, we're not going to offer you this job." But he stayed on staff. I think he got suspended without pay. That was part of the punishment there. But then I guess 5 years was enough time to forget about it. So now he was renounced as the successor. And Kyle Whittingham's old. He's like 64, almost he'll be 65 like later this year in the middle of the season. And he also later on mentioned like it's day to day. Like his retirement, he's not thinking about it year to year. He's thinking about retirement like day to day. Like to use those words is kind of crazy. So I wonder if that's what he's telling his recruits too. Like that's odd to me. I want Kyle Whittingham to coach as long as possible. It's just also so interesting to me that like he was a legitimate candidate in like jobs this past year, like Texas A&M job. Like he was a legitimate candidate. That's crazy. So yeah, it feels like he's kind of got a foot out the door, I guess.
I mean, we saw with Saban. I mean, it just happened where like he was recruiting, and then all of a sudden Miss Terry's talking to him, and it's like, yeah, I can't do it anymore. This is the right time, and it just kind of happens. It comes up quick on you, like it's day to day. Like Kyle Whittingham said, I do think I do want to credit Cover Three podcast for this. It's going to be his 30th year at Utah, and that is a big milestone to be at for retirement fund for the state of Utah as a public university, a public
Oh,
employee. That's a big time number to get to. Now, has he made plenty of money? Yes, I'm sure he has. but I do think the retirement package that he will get will be very, very substantial, where it's not nothing he's gonna have to worry about. And I'm sure he's got plenty saved up. But it's another thing to think about too, where it's he's been there since 1994. That is 30 years.
So he's favored to win the Big 12. It's Cam Rising's last year, and Cam Rising has also expressed this past year that this is
What
his last year, even though he was
it's Cam
granted,
Rising's second to last year if he wants it.
but he's already said that this he wants this to be his last year. So maybe it's both their last years, end of an era.
Yeah.
I mean, they both what played and coached. I mean, the same number of years, pretty much.
Almost a
So,
decade together. That is wild. That is
so
wild.
that's crazy. So maybe maybe Kyle Whittingham will go off in the sunset when Cam Rising goes, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought that was interesting. So that is cool though too. 2027 they're playing Miami. That's pretty awesome. So
Yeah.
side note. But anyways, let's talk about
What,
Neil
what's
Brown.
real quick, real quick.
Okay,
Utah, Miami. Okay, remember Miami? Yeah, it was the Catholics versus convicts. Isn't that crazy? It was like
Oh,
Mormons
now it's
versus convicts.
now it's now it's Mormons versus convicts. That's crazy.
Okay, I had to say that.
That's pretty funny. Well, let's talk about Neil Brown at West Virginia. He says, quote, "This is a physical run the ball, stop the run league." And to me, that's crazy because I mean, how long ago was it we were watching RG3, right? And Will Greer and those Geno Smith and those West Virginia teams,
Mahomes, or Greer, or Mahomes and
Mahomes,
Mayfield.
Holmes and Mayfield. I mean, it was just a
Oh,
no
yeah, Geno Smith.
defense, just air the ball out type of league. But you know what? I don't know if it's because everyone started switching to the 3-3-5. That
Was it Trayvon Boykin and Bryce Petty? Sorry, just one more.
yeah, but because the Matt Campbell kind of started that trend in the Big 12, if I'm correct. Someone might be able to correct me on that, but and it had a lot of success early on. I think a lot of teams moved to that. I believe TCU moved to that. I think is that not what they were running when they made
They
the
were,
national
but now they
championship?
got Andy Avalos in.
Now they got Andy Alves. It'll
They're
be
moving to a four
4-2-5.
down front. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But the point is, I think, yeah, it's just kind of beauty, very poetic that the game of football is cyclical like that. Within the macro, like you have your when you talk about like economy, right? Economics, you have your macroeconomics and your microeconomics, right? Macro, right? College football is like offensively heavy, pass, but you have these micro environments, right? Where you just see this conference that used to be just this incredibly high powered passing offense, and you got teams like Oklahoma State that are running the ball effectively a lot. I think Iowa State with Abu Sama is going to run the ball a lot. Texas
yeah.
Tech with Taj Brooks at the end of the year was running the ball a ton.
Devin Neal,
Uh,
Kansas.
Devin Neal, Kansas, just that crazy run game that they have over there. I think Kyle Whitting or not Kyle Whitting. Well, yeah, Kyle Whittingham running the ball a ton. Of Kansas State, West Virginia. I mean, the list goes on, and I love it. I love it. So I thought that was really interesting. So um yeah, if any of you guys that are listening to this in the comments, let us know if there are any legendary Big 12 quarterbacks in the last. I'll say Brandon Weeden before anyone else says that.
Wow.
I think that's a good one. Uh, so uh, rule though, no Texas, no Oklahoma. All right, give me all
That
the other
that
Big 12.
that should go without stated.
That should go without being
Oh,
stated. So,
I mean, you gotta go Graham Harrell, but
oh well, that's a little bit. I guess, yeah, that's still kind of the. I guess that was the start of it. I guess
in terms of like the air raid, yeah, but that was Mike Leach air raid. I mean,
it was, yeah. So I'm saying that was like the beginning, I
yeah.
guess, of like that kind of offense being played in the Big 12. Man, I
So
feel
that
like
was
there's so
pre
many.
Nadamakan Sue. Well, that was pre Nadamakan Sue just owning Colt McCoy in Texas.
Yeah, absolutely. So the last one that we're going to talk about coaching wise, we're going to talk about Mike Gundy. Yes, I know you've heard it. Um, I'm just going to put the full quote. Basically, he was asked about Ollie Gordon's DUI. If you don't know, that's your star running back. He got a DUI. Okay. And Mike Gundy was asked about it, right? And Mike Gundy had this to say about it. Quote, I looked it up on my phone. What would be the legal limit? In Oklahoma, it's .08, and Ollie was point 0.1. So I looked it up, and it was based on body weight. Not to get in the legal side of it, but I thought, really? 2 or 3 beers or four? I'm not justifying what Ollie did. I'm telling you what decision I made. Well, I thought I've probably done it 1,000 times in my life. And it was just fine. So I got lucky. People get lucky. Ollie made a decision that he wished he could have done better. Is suspending him for one game really going to matter? I don't think so. Now, before we go hate mode, because I love Mike Gundy. Gosh, if you've listened to the show since day one, you know that I am a Mike Gundy stan. The guy's made me a lot of money. Anyways, I think what he was trying to say, right, and he just said it so completely wrong. I think he was trying to say that kids make mistakes, right? And let's not hang it over their heads their entire lives. And maybe suspending him a game, like, isn't going to teach him something that he hasn't already learned from this experience. Like maybe if he said something like that, like it would have been perceived a little bit better. But he was trying to make it sound. This quote makes it sound like he was trying to say that it's not that big of a deal, and it is. Drinking and
Yeah.
driving is an incredibly selfish thing to do. Incredibly selfish. You are putting, because you didn't want to pay for an Uber, right? You are putting other people's lives in harm, right? And no one cares about your life if you're driving, right? It is other people's lives that you're putting in danger, right? That's the big red flag here. So I
And
do
by the
think
way,
it
he's also
sounded
he's
like,
20 years old. He's 20 years old too.
yeah, a
Under 21 years old.
underage. So interesting enough. I thought it could have maybe. No one's gonna argue that he that he should have handled that better, said it better. But I'm willing to defend him on the part. I think I know what he was trying to say. That's what I'll say. I'm not gonna say that Ollie Gordon was right or he's just a kid or what. Like no one should be doing that, and people are educated enough not to do that. But I don't know why Mike Gundy said it the way that he said it. I don't know.
No,
Literally, like
normally
every Big 12 media days, it is a spectacle for Mike Gundy. Last year, what was he? He had like the 19-second opening opening statement.
oh, yeah, dude, it
Or
was
no, it
awesome.
was like not even 90. It was like 4 seconds. He's like, all right, we got any questions?
Dude, and then they went and they made the Big 12 championship. No, like, listen, normally when you put Mike Gundy in front of Mike From, it is gold. It is gold. This was an uncommon L. This was an absolute L for Mike Gundy, and like you said, not justifying, what he's saying, but I do think that he just didn't say it the way he wanted to, and I'm sure he would have loved to take it back. My takeaway from it is though is how do you have to look up what the legal limit is? Okay, shouldn't you
Yeah,
know that?
what?
It's
Like it's
0.08 is something you've known since you were 14, right? Probably.
yeah,
I don't
like
know, but
taking driver's education, or whatever. I don't know. I don't know what they
jeez,
did. I don't know what they did
dude,
where he's
he's like nothing. Probably 2 to 3 to 4 beers, and it's like okay, I
it's
I
like,
don't
oh,
know.
I've probably done that 1,000 times. I don't know. I mean,
He would have got like they brought Ollie Gordon. He went up there. He owned it, and he was gonna move past this, and he's gonna take a hit in his draft stock and other things. I'm sure they're having him do different things within the program. And all they had to say is he's gonna get punished enough for it, right? Through his draft stock, everything else internally, we're gonna take care of it. Nothing else has to be done. He made a mistake. He knows it, and he goes up the podium. He admits it. Blah blah blah. This thing blows over. But now people are re-bringing up Ollie Gordon and re-tearing down Ollie Gordon for something he did. Yes, he made a mistake. Absolutely. Is it terrible? Yeah, absolutely. But he's 20 years old, right, with a lot of money and whatnot. Like it's gonna happen. And just I'm glad no one got hurt, right? And I hope he learned his lesson. That's what I'll say on that. But I do think Mike Gundy was trying to stand up for his star running back, and he totally ended up bringing him into the light again, and he ended up burying him, or just burying him and Ollie, which is
I will say there was a follow-up question that was like about maybe his punishment. I don't know if it was a follow-up question or if it was just the end of this quote, but he's basically he was talking about the punishment that he's going to give Ollie Gordon. He's like, I don't know, probably make him run the ball 50 times in the first game. So
it's awesome.
I immediately go, I'm like, hmm, maybe we're just gonna absolutely pound Ollie Gordon to win the Heisman at whatever the frick odds he's at, because it sounds like Ollie Gordon is about to go absolutely crazy.
We love
So
storylines in college football, and it's a little comeback story. Maybe there in Stillwater, but
look, and this isn't gambling advice, right? But Ollie Gordon is plus 7,500 to win the Heisman. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying.
I wonder if his odds went down. I wonder if it's changed because of this.
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to look at that. I'd have to look at that. Maybe I can look at. I don't know.
I don't know
Maybe
how
I'll
to
let you
check that,
talk
but
about. I'll let you talk about something in the meantime while I try to find. Oh, here I got June 25th. So I'll let you talk about it or talk about something. I don't know what you want to talk about, but
yeah, I don't know. I mean, Mike Gundy, he stole the show, right? And as he always does, and obviously not for the right reasons. So I don't know. You guys let us know what you think about it. Not only Mike Gundy, but also everything else we talked about with the Big 12. This is
dude, Ollie Gordon. And this is on a different book, but it was at plus 4,000 like 5 days ago, and now he's at plus 7,500 on FanDuel. This is one was on BetMGM, one was on FanDuel. So I don't know if
dude,
someone else who watches the show can figure out if this actually was a change in the same books. But if that's the case, plus 7,500
dude,
could be a
I don't know
could
if
be a
he'll win it.
sprinkle.
I don't think he'll win it. I don't know if they'll give it to him. I mean, Mac Jones didn't get it, but that was also years before he did DUI.
But that wasn't why they didn't give Mac Jones the Heisman.
Well, I mean, yeah, but yeah, I'm just saying.
That is not why they didn't give Mac Jones that. It was because Devonta Smith was just a better football player. Saying crazier people have won the Heisman. Mark Ingram won the Heisman in 2009, and Toby Gerhart had like 300 more yards than him and like many more touchdowns.
No, it's not ridiculous at all. That's not
Now,
ridiculous.
and because every team like now there's 12 teams in the playoffs, it's not that you're in a New Year's Six bowl or a national like well I guess New Year's Six bowl, but it's not that you don't have to. How do I say this? Feels like in the last couple years, with the exception of this year, right? Because Jaden Daniels was pretty extraordinary. Feels like some of these Heisman Trophy winners have been on some of the highest ranked teams, right? Specifically a quarterback where your spotlight, there's just more national broadcast attention. I think there's just gonna be more focus on the playoffs. And if Oklahoma State is in the playoff running, like Oklahoma State's gonna have more media coverage on them. You know what I'm saying? Like Oklahoma State is not built to have a Heisman Trophy winner because there's just not enough national media coverage on them, which is a crime, obviously. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like Toby Gerhart and Christian McCaffrey were both robbed of Alabama running backs, right? And they were both went to Stanford, right? Like which team is the media talking about more, right? Heisman Trophy voters. I bet I know there are some people that probably didn't even know who Toby Gerhart was. Nah, that's probably not true. But there are some Heisman voters out there that are not incredibly intelligent, I'm sure, because I'm sure there's Heisman Trophy voters out there that are not incredibly intelligent. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's an interesting look. Something. It's an interesting look. Yeah, obviously, like there's a billion people that can. There's so many people that can win the Heisman this year. Like I'm looking at all these guys. I'm like, wow, that guy could win it. That guy could win it. That guy. But
I'll
anyways,
give you one more quarterback. Davis Webb, Texas Tech. Boom.
wow, that's a name
Before he
drop
went
and
to
a half.
Cal.
That is a name drop and a half. What about Oh, you already said Bryce Petty. Dang it, that was mine. That blows.
There's
Well,
another Baylor quarterback.
Brock Purdy was obviously one.
Yeah, I mean, Colin Klein, iconic. We already talked about him.
Colin Klein. But that was like such a different kind of offense, though. Bill
Yeah, that was just
Snyder, the Bill Snyder offense. Love that stuff. But yeah, anyways, that's it. That's all we got for Big 12 Media Days. Thank you all
Mason
so much
Rudolph.
for.
Mason Rudolph. Sorry.
No, he's got to sneak one in there. He just had to. He had to. Yeah, let us know who are your Big 12 retro quarterbacks if you're our age, aka in your 20s or 30s. Um, but yeah, thank you all for checking us out. We appreciate you so much. If you would hit that like button, subscribe button, right? If you like the content, like the video. It's that simple. Again, consider subscribing because we got some more stuff coming up these next couple of weeks. We got media days, more of them coming up, and we have conference previews, and then basically football season starts. Like we're almost halfway through July, so buckle up, strap in. let's get ready for the ride that is 2024 season. CD, you got anything else for on the way out?
No, I hope you guys enjoyed. Obviously, like you said, subscribe, like, all that good stuff, and hopefully we'll see you guys soon.
Absolutely. We'll see y'all in the next one.